Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Monro-Jones, and I am the Chief Operating Officer for the IAPC&M. It's my pleasure today to host one of our roundtable discussions, and today we'll be talking about the difference between coaching, mentoring, and supervision. I'm also very privileged today to be joined by two experts in the field, and in alphabetical order, I would like to introduce you to Kerrie Dorman, who is the founder of the Association of Business Mentors. She's also, sorry, Kerrie. And she is an accredited fellow mentor with the IAPC&M. Kerrie?
Hi, thank you. Yes, it's great to be here.
Thank you. And I would also like to introduce you to Robert Stephenson. He is a training director with Animus Centre for Coaching and is representing the Association of Coaching Supervisors as the London ambassador.
Hi there, great to be on the call.
Thank you. So before we begin, I think it would be useful for our listeners just to have perhaps sort of like a snapshot of who you are, and then that'll put things into context, and then we'll get into the meat of the conversation. So again, Kerrie, would you like to just provide a little snapshot of what you do?
Indeed, yes. I am the COO and founder of the Association of Business Mentors, which is a credibility platform for practicing mentors, whether they are workplace mentoring, whether they're volunteer mentors, whether they're professional mentors. And what we mean by that is they earn their living, they charge fees for their mentoring, and our activities include providing support for mentors that come from any one of those pools that I've just described, to support them in their day-to-day mentoring activity, to make sure that they remain credible and comfortable, that they are providing the best possible service in terms of mentoring to their clients and mentees.
Thank you. And Robert, may I invite you to do the same, please?
Yep, sure. So I work as a training director with Animus Centre for Coaching. We train coaches and we also train supervisors. And I also am the London ambassador for AOX, which is a supervision organisation that works with supervisors to explore best practice and also development. And the work that I do is both with coaches and supervisors, looking at how we can enhance our practice, but also how we can make sure that we are following best practice principles as we develop our work with our clients.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so one of the things that often comes up in conversation, and is certainly part of the accreditation process for senior and master level coaches within our own organisation, is this question about, well, what is the difference between coaching, mentoring, and supervision? And also within that, when would you use one rather than another? When is one more appropriate? What can each one do? What are the limitations? So I thought it would be useful to perhaps start with your own personal definitions of the field that you work in, and then start to have a little bit more of a conversation about what we see as the differences, how we would recognize that, possibly talk a little bit about the contracting stage as well. So Robert, would you care to kick us off with your understanding and your definition of coaching supervision?
Yeah, sure. So for me, supervision is about the exploration, the reflection, and the in-depth look at your coaching with your clients. So supervision is about the work that you are doing as a coach with your clients. So looking at who your clients are, any challenges that you're having with your clients, any issues around ethics or boundaries that are showing up within the work that you're doing with your clients, and to explore that for you as the coach. So you would work with a supervisor to look at your coaching practice and your coaching development.
Okay, thank you. And Kerrie, your definition of mentoring, please.
Our definition of mentoring, well, the differences between coaching and mentoring is this. So anybody, as long as they have been taught the specific skills and techniques, can be a coach. But they must carry the necessary qualifications in order to be one. However, a mentor must have lived and the actual experience within the arena in which they are mentoring. So let's just take, for example, the majority of our members, they mentor small to medium-sized business owners. They have actually run a business themselves. So they've walked the walk, so to speak, and a classic phrase is they've got the scars and the t-shirt to prove it. And that's important for mentoring, because unless you've actually been in the multiple situations that you can find yourself in whilst running a business, it's very, very difficult to mentor somebody without that experience and that hindsight. So they're the fundamental differences that we stand by with mentoring and coaching definitions. We were actually finding it very powerful now that there's a wonderful mix of both disciplines. So the majority of our members have also got coaching qualifications, and so they can dip into both disciplines, which makes it highly effective practice. With supervision, which is something that we've just implemented, we've just refined, and it is exactly as Robert has described. It's looking into your practices, making sure that someone is holding you accountable, so to speak, but just making sure that you also are able to let go of any of the issues or the weight that your clients may be carrying. So it's a very healthy way of practicing and making sure that everybody remains credible.
And it's interesting that you mentioned, certainly within mentoring, I think the terminology you used was, you've got the t-shirt and you've got the scars to prove it as well, which is quite a nice analogy, which I like and I can certainly relate to. And I think one of the things that we often mention in coaching, and Robert, I'd be interested in your view of this, with regards to your coach training experience, is that we often say that as a coach you can generally work in any environment, or with any client, because it's very much about the way that you approach it, the structure, the questions, and helping that person to be the best that they can be. But I think that there's an element in that of having to have the experience and the capability of speaking the client's language. So certainly if you're working in executive coaching or business coaching or leadership coaching, an ability to understand what they mean by sort of team development or sort of like business planning or structuring or strategy, I think is important, because you certainly wouldn't want to be going through the coaching conversation and every other question is, I'm sorry, can you just clarify what you mean by that? But it is interesting in terms of the, what level of experience do you need in terms of, presenting yourself in your chosen discipline. Kerrie, I'd like to come back to one of the comments that you made about dipping in and dipping out of the coaching and mentoring, and I will come back to that, and I have made a note of it. But Robert, as I mentioned, I would really like to your views, in terms of that definition of coaching, and the ability to use the client's language.
So I think as a life coach or transformational coach or general coach, whatever kind of framework or term you're using there, you don't have to have an experience or a knowledge of what the client is bringing. But as soon as you become a specialist or you niche in your coaching, then it's useful to understand where the framework that the client is coming from. So if you're a leadership or you're an executive or corporate coach, then you're going to want to understand that world and that language in order to work with your clients. If you're a life coach and you're working with that sort of day-to-day issues, perhaps you're looking at stress or work-life balance, then that's less necessary to have a specific language. But what I notice is that the more people niche, the more they have to understand the language that sits within that niche.
Mm. And Kerrie, do you find similar things within mentoring, that even if you're a business mentor, there are still niche areas?
Without a doubt, yes. In terms of industry sector, in terms of other specialisms, whether you're dealing with, well, we very much with mentoring, we kind of have this two-pronged approach. So it's mindset and looking at the structure makeup of either the department or the business, which then filters around the team and the plans that are in place to reach various targets and all that type of thing. So yeah, niching is definitely is rife within mentoring, and I like this whole reference to knowing the language. I think that's really important.
Okay, so if I asked you both, and equally so, as we talk about this, if you have your own questions, please feel free to throw them out. But when is each of these disciplines more appropriate than others? So when is coaching more appropriate than mentoring? When should it be mentoring? When should it be more of a supervision? And I'd be interested, if you have any practical examples that you can share with the people who are listening, and also to increase our own knowledge.
So I can sort of begin this. I was doing some work with a client recently who was a coach looking to develop and build their own coaching practice. So within this, we were doing all of those elements. So we were doing some coaching around their own limiting beliefs and their own sense of self. So that's where the coaching sat. Then we did some work around mentoring, looking at what was necessary in order to build up their coaching practice. How might they go about advertising themselves, marketing themselves? What might their niche be, and how they might speak about that in the public world, as it were. And then we were doing supervision, looking at the clients that they did have, how were they working with those clients, and managing the relationship between themselves and their clients, and any boundaries or ethical issues that were coming up. So for me, there is this sense of coaching is around the person and what's going on for them. The mentoring is around the business or the thing that they want to do that I have experience about, that I can share that experience with them to enable them to fast track that or to learn from my experience. And then the supervision is the bit that's looking at the actual practice or the work that they're doing with them clients themselves.
Thank you. Kerrie?
Yeah, I think Robert's hit the nail on the head with that, actually. I completely and utterly agree. So with supervision, it's very much coach on coach or mentor on mentor, or indeed coach on mentor, but the professionals do supervising each other. It's the supervision is not something you do with your client, which is what Robert's just outlined. So yeah, I mean, I've recently been practicing what we've just put in place in terms of supervision. And so one of our other members receives my notes on a regular basis, and then questions and comments on what's going on there. And then we will follow up with a telephone conversation once a month, and I absolutely love it. It has had such a beneficial effect on the way that I look at all the various options that I've gone through with my own client, and just also checking, my credibility with the whole relationship. So yeah, I'm a big fan of supervision at the moment.
Yeah, and it's something that very similar to yourself, that within the IAPC&M, certainly as part of the accreditation process, we strongly recommend, or highly recommend, whichever word you want to use, that supervision is part of your ongoing development. And the only reason that we don't make it compulsory is very much around the similar thing with mentoring and in coaching, that if you force somebody to do it, they'll be doing it because they think they should do, as opposed to wanting to and getting some benefit out of it. And I certainly think that there is significant growing evidence that the supervision is becoming more popular. And I have my own supervisor, albeit they are not from the coaching field, but they are from the counselling field. And I also have a colleague who is a teaching and supervising transactional analysis and works in the field of not so much counselling, but more deeper therapies, and also acts as a supervisor when we're talking about any programs that I might be running as an associate or anything of that nature. And I concur with what you've both said, that you get a different perspective out of it, which makes you start to ask your own questions, which I find incredibly beneficial. I've paused there incidentally for anybody to chip in.
I was just going to say that one of the things that we do with our coaches is that we provide supervision for them, and to give them a recognition and an understanding of what that brings to their coaching, so that once they've finished the coaching course, that they can then continue to seek out supervision. And as a supervisor, one of the things that I do is from time to time we'll offer free supervision for coaches that haven't had supervision, so they can also get a sense of how does this work impact on the coaching that they do. And I know that any coaches that are going into organizations are now often saying, okay, do you have a supervisor? Do you have somebody who checks where you are with this work so that you're okay with whatever it is that you're doing?
I think that's really good, because it gives people that sense of experience of knowing what it is. And then, I do think that's a really good idea. Incredibly, we've been talking almost now for 25 minutes. I genuinely don't know where the time goes. But I do have a couple of just final questions.
Sorry, I've got a quick question, if that's okay.
Please.
Slip that in there just before we carry on. So, Robert, I'm really interested to learn how you match supervisor to coach.
So currently we don't have a matching system. So what we do is we have a pool of supervisors that run group supervision sessions for our coaches in training. And then we have one-to-one supervisors who will also work with our students in training. And then if you're a coach that's looking for a supervisor, what I will do with you is explore what kind of supervision are you looking for? Is there a particular style or way of working that you would want your supervisor to have? And then look for supervisors who have that style or that way of working to then pair people up.
Okay, interesting. And when you're approached by a coach for a supervisor, for supervision to be provided, what's their number one reason for it?
So a lot of the people that approach me, it's either because they are developing into an ICF ACC coach. They're looking to get personally accredited, so they need to have that. So it's about building their own credibility and accreditation within the industry. And then sometimes it's about a coach that has a large workload of clients. So especially if they're an internal coach, they've got a lot of internal clients, a lot of logistics that they're working with, and they need supervision around how they manage that.
Thank you.
Okay, so my final question really is certainly twofold. So one of which builds on Robert, your point, and Kerrie, your earlier one, and that is if you're working with a client for the first time, and you're having that contracting session, in a nutshell, because I'm mindful of time, and contracting will be another roundtable discussion, I hasten to point out, but when you're actually doing that contracting session for what the client wants, how do you identify the difference between whether they want coaching or mentoring or supervision, or a combination of of all three as part of that contract?
So for me, this is all about the outcome that the client is seeking. So once I get clear on the outcome, then I can help the client to get clear on what modality would best suit the reaching of that outcome, or what combination of modalities will best suit the reaching of that outcome. And in that conversation, in that sort of contracting conversation, we can begin to look at this. And one of the things that I talk to supervisors and coaches in training about is to keep the contracting conversation ongoing, so you can recontract with your clients if you notice that they've come to you for coaching, but they're asking lots of questions about your experience. Perhaps actually what they're looking for and they haven't identified is that they want mentoring, so that you can then recontract to have a mentoring process with them instead of a coaching one. And likewise, if they begin to ask lots of questions about their own practice, you can then recontract into a supervision contract.
Thank you. And Kerrie?
Yes, on the same theme, it's all about the questions and their answers. Although I find, and I stand by the general voice of the ABM members, that a lot of the times we'll have clients approaching us thinking that they want mentoring, but actually they need some coaching, and also vice versa. So they don't actually really know what they want most of the time, and they're actually looking to us for direction. And so then it's down to us for that contracting reasons to identify who needs what and at what point. So it's down to the questioning skills, really.
It's interesting, because I think you've both summarised something that it's the outcome. So like in the end result that the client is looking for, that identifies what the modality is, what the approach is going to be. And one of the things that Marshall Goldsmith always states is that when you're working with a client, they're not really interested in your approach or necessarily what you're going to charge or things of that nature. What they're interested in is can you help me achieve what it is that I need to achieve. And I think the conversation and the way that you've both highlighted things, really identifies that, whatever discipline you come from, your focus is very much on the client and what the client wants, and then deciding whether, it's you that they want to be working with, and if it is, what approach are you actually going to take? So I'm ever mindful of time. Mm-hmm. So what I'd like to do, if I may, is if you would like to summarise, either part of the conversation or your ending salvo, for want of a better description, about either coaching or mentoring or supervision, then now is the opportunity for you to do it. So, Kerrie, would you like to go first?
Yes. So, to summarise, supervision is an incredibly healthy way to make sure that you're delivering at the best of your possible expertise. And really, for the individual professional, whether you're a coach or a mentor, or you have the ability to dip into both, to make sure that you have your own sounding board, which is outside of your own mentor. One of our stipulations is that mentors should have their own mentors, talk the talk and practice what you preach. But it's a very different slant, supervision, and I think it should be a must for everybody who's practicing as a mentor. And we need to take a leaf out of the coaching world, really, and implement that.
Thank you. And Robert?
Yeah, so I would, echo what's been said around that supervision gives you a reflective lens through which to look at your own practice and to develop your practice and to ask questions of yourself around your choices and ways of working, especially if you have an emotional or an emotion heavy workload that you are working with or exploring. And just as something to think about as well is just that when you have a supervisor, it also allows you to be really clear about, are you coaching or are you mentoring when you're working with your clients, or are you doing any consultancy with your clients? Because you can reflect back and notice what is the approach that you are using, and whether you're blending or shifting into areas unconsciously when you're working with your clients.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to wrap the session up by thanking you both very much. Kerrie, founder of the Association of Business Mentors, Robert and representing the Association of Coaching Supervisors. From my perspective, we are very proud within the IAPC&M to be networking partners with both of you, with the Association of Coaching Supervisors and with the Association of Business Mentors. We will certainly have other discussions on consultancy, therapy and counselling, so like in the difference between those. Anybody who is coming through our accreditation process, the recommendation will be to seek coaching supervision, which would be through the Association of Coach Supervisors. Anybody who comes through our mentoring accreditation who works in the business field will again be encouraged to approach the Association of Business Mentors to have a discussion with them about joining that organisation. So on behalf of everyone, I would like to say that I've really enjoyed the conversation. I genuinely don't know where the time goes. I'm sure we could continue this conversation for at least another half hour, if not more. And once again, thank you very much for your time, Robert and Kerrie.
Thank you.